If you're looking to get the most out of the Gladius Task Force from the Space Marine Codex, then we've got a free lesson lined up for you. This is taken from our Masterclass series, and in this video, myself and Michael are going to be going over everything in regards to that Gladius Task Force, from the army rule, the enhancements, and the stratagems. But we're also going to take a look at those with a fine-tooth comb. We're going to see which units are going to work best, some of the top combos, and really dive in deep to help you with your list building, because that's going to be coming up in future videos. So in this Masterclass series, we're going to be going over absolutely everything there is to know about playing the Gladius Detachment for your Space Marines. Now, before we get stuck in, one thing to note is that if you really enjoy this lesson and you want to get the whole host of lessons from the Masterclass series, then check out the link below and you'll be able to get all the other detachments and all the other codexes that have also been released by Games Workshop in our Masterclass format, where we look at an overview, we take a look at the strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities and the threats of that, we take a look at a competitive list, how to deploy it, and then we look at some top tactics on the tabletop using some key combos and stratagems. So if you get value from this video and you want to see the rest, then check out that link below.
In this module, we're going to be taking a look at the Gladius Task Force, the most versatile of all Space Marine detachments. Stephen, what can we expect from this army?
Well, just like all the others, obviously we're going to have an army rule, which is going to be the Oath of Moment, which gives you reroll hits against a target, which you're going to basically pick in your command phase. Super, super strong ability, and obviously you get that because you're a Space Marine. But you're also going to get a lot more. You're also going to get your detachment rule, which is called Doctrines, which allows you in your command phase to pick a doctrine to enter into, which is really, really good because it gives you so much flexibility. Now, these doctrines allow you to either pick whether you want to have something like advance in charge for your army, or you could have something like fall back in charge and fall back in shoot, or even advance in shoot. So each of these doctrines have a specific name as well. So the Devastator Doctrine essentially gives your army assault. The Tactical Doctrine gives you the ability to fall back in charge and fall back in shoot. And the last one is that Assault Doctrine, that advance in charge. So they do last until the start of your next command phase as well.
Okay, and this affects all Space Marine units?
All Space Marine units.
And can you use these more than once in a game?
No. They are once per battle army-wide. There are ways to manipulate it though, and we're going to go over those when we come into the enhancements and also the stratagems, which we're going to be covering next.
Okay, fantastic. My final question is, do you have to use them round one?
No. You can wait, you don't have to use them if you don't want. You can pick exactly when you use what, and there's no set order either. So if you think, actually, I want a bit of advance in charge next turn, you can do that.
Okay,
yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well then, enhancements, what have we got? How can we upgrade our characters?
Well, there's 4 enhancements to choose from, and again, each of these are kind of, I would say, a good variety, and you'll see typically they'll lean into one of those doctrines, okay? So the first one is Artificer Armor. Now, this is probably the cheapest of all the different enhancements that you can take, and it basically gives the bearer a 2+ save and also a 5+ feel no pain. Now, again, if you've got the points, why not chuck it on one of those characters that you don't want to be precisioned out, basically?
Okay, can you give me maybe a couple of examples where you might use this if you've got the points?
Yeah, so for us, it will actually see this in the list that I'm going to be putting together. I'm actually going to put this on a Judicer because the Judicer with that Fight First ability adds so much power to the unit, and you only get that Fight First ability whilst the leader is alive. So yeah, for me, you want to put it on those key characters that only benefit the unit with their ability whilst they're leading.
Fantastic, because you could have a sniper or some other weapon that could take out the Judicia in the shooting phase and you could charge them. Now you don't have fights first anymore.
Exactly that, yeah.
Right, I like that. What's the second enhancement?
The next one is called the Honorvehement. Now what this gives you is +1 attack and strength on one of your characters. However, and this is where they start to lean into different doctrines, when you are in the Assault Doctrine, you get 2 extra attacks, 2 extra strength.
Okay,
yeah.
Fantastic. Good examples for this one?
A captain. A generic Space Marine captain, because on the turn in which you get to go the super crazy, Super Saiyan, devastating wounds, extra 3 attacks, combine this with the Assault Doctrine turn, and all of a sudden you're going to get an additional 2 attacks plus the additional 3 on top of whatever base attacks you've got. You could be rocking in at something like 10 attacks, all devastating wounds, and if you put this in the right unit, you could be fishing for those reroll wounds for all devastating attacks.
Fantastic. Okay, very nice, very nice. And the third one?
The third one is the Adepta the Codex. Now, what this can only go on is a captain, so it's slightly restrictive, and it allows your unit to be in the tactical doctrine once per game.
Okay, right. So if you don't have a doctrine active, you can pick the tactical doctrine for just your unit.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. We'll talk about which doctrines may be the best after we've covered all the enhancements and stratagems.
Yeah.
What is the fourth enhancement?
The fourth one is Fire Discipline. Now, this is a very, very strong one, and it's probably the best in terms of the sheer amount of damage output that it can actually add to the army. So it gives you sustained hits 1, as you know, is a really, really great ability anyway. But when you're in that Devastator Doctrine, it's going to give you critical hits on 5s. Now, if you combine this with the Oath of Moment, so you're re-rolling all of your hits, basically anything that's not a 5, you pick it up and you re-roll it, and you're just fishing for more and more sustained attacks.
Okay, fantastic. And is this ranged or melee attacks?
It's ranged attacks.
Ranged attacks only, right, okay. And are there any other specific combos or maybe characters that you would put this on?
Yep, you'll see this in our competitive list as well. Something like any sort of lieutenant equivalent that gives your army lethal hits. So we've got the Apothecary Biologus that also gives you lethal hits. So now you're getting lethal and sustained on those 5+ from all of your ranged attacks.
Fantastic. And are there specific types of units do you want to focus on giving this ability to by leading them?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you could either go down the route of any sort of attack that you want to get a lot more value out of. So let's take, for example, if you're up against potentially a Horde army, you would definitely want to put this into, something like a unit of aggressors. Okay, so then that Apothecary Biologus is going to really add a lot more benefit to the army. It's going to get you so much more damage out of that unit compared to having to taking multiples of that unit, if that makes sense. So if you feel like there's a weakness in your army, oh, do you know what I could do with a few more units to maybe deal with Horde? You could maybe put this in instead just to get more maximum output from the one dedicated unit you've got. Alternatively, you could put this with Eradicators with their big melter rifles. So this Apothecary Biologus, depending on the matchup, you could then just go, actually, I'm up against Knights, cool, you're going with the Eradicators because I need you to be really devastating. I need you to constantly pick up more units. Up against a Horde, chuck it in with those aggressors so you can really mix and match if you had those two. Alternatively, you just use it as, do you know what, I'm not taking many anti-vehicle guns, so I'm going to take Fire Discipline to bolster the amount of anti-vehicle damage I can take in the army.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And those are probably two of the best examples. You can use that rule.
Yeah.
I think we have seen it played with Hellblasters as
yeah.
well.
Stern Guard could also be good.
Guard.
Yeah. So yeah, basically any unit you really want to maximise its efficiency with, this is the one you take.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. So enhancement-wise, what's your go-to immediate to conclude?
I think if I've got the units for it, it's going to be Fire Discipline. I think if you can find the 30 points, it's well worth it. But yeah, it's certainly fantastic. I think Honorvehement is cheap enough to sometimes fit in at the very end. And of course, Artificer Armour, if you've got those, minuscule points left. But for me, the one that I've never really taken, it's the one that allows you to be in the Tactical Doctrine.
Right, okay, and I think it's because of that restriction of not having a current doctrine applied. It's so rare.
And situational.
Yeah. And you have to put it on a captain as well.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So stratagems then, what are we working with? What's our first stratagem?
So the first stratagem, like all the other Space Marine detachments, is Armour Contempt. We can reduce the incoming AP by 1.
Okay, and where is this the most effective?
Anything where this has like a 2+ save. If you're getting 2+ save and the benefits are covered, then all of a sudden your opponent needs, kind of AP, even 2 is still on a 2+ save. So if you're putting this on Centurions, on Terminators, this could actually be a really, really good use. Or making a unit with a 3+ save like your aggressors, just handle a little bit more damage coming in.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. What's the second stratagem?
So the next one is Only in Death Does Duty End. This is 2 CPs, however, it gives you automatic fight on death.
Okay, this is just guaranteed. This unit is going to hit you when you destroy those models.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a difficult decision. When do you think you would take it over not taking it? Because sometimes a melee unit charges you and you might expect to only kill 3 models. Is that still worth it? Or do you make sure that they can kill at least most of the squad?
So there's a few things you need to consider. Is if you've got 2 CPs, then you're either going to fart on death or you're going to interrupt. So If you don't have an interrupt option, fight on death. If you don't have multiple combats going on, just that one combat, it's probably worth fighting on death, I think. Is that then ability going to trigger any other effects? Who knows? Like some armies actually get better when they're damaged. So you want to avoid that if you think you're only going to pick up a couple of models. You really want to be using this when you know you're going to completely either wipe the enemy unit or significantly cripple it so that small arms fire in your next turn can easily pick that up without kind of having to overextend yourself. So that's when I feel like it's most useful. Sometimes you might not want to do it if you've got a really durable unit. Okay, so you can often be in that decision when you're selecting me as a target. I know I'm pretty durable. I then need to math out how many I think you're going to kill because I might be better off spending Armor of Contempt and reducing the damage that's going to come out instead of this, because you might only kill one model. And then one model might fight on death for 2 CPs. I could have Armor of Contempted, you could have killed nobody, and then I get my unit to swing back anyway at the cost of 1 CP rather than 2 CPs. So I think that's kind of you knowing your matchup, and the more you play your army, understanding what units do what to you is really where that decision will come into be most clear for you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, what else we got to work with?
So the next one is Honor the Chapter. This is a stratagem which allows you to basically get more out of that Assault Doctrine. So you're always going to get Lance for this stratagem. But if you're in the Assault Doctrine, you're also going to increase the AP of your combat attacks by 1 as well.
Okay, and increasing AP is rare, and it's absolutely fantastic here.
Yeah.
Is this if your army's in Assault Doctrine, or can it be if just your unit's in Assault Doctrine?
It's when the unit's under the effect of the Assault Doctrine.
Right, okay, fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so what's a good example for where you can use this?
I think if you know your opponent has any ability to either negate, like if they've got an Armor of Contempt, it might be a great way to then use this as well. So you kind of reverse the effects, or they might think, oh, there's no point using Armor of Contempt now. So that's, I think, a really good example. Or you might want to do it just so it gets them to their invulnerable save. You know, all of a sudden your Assault Intercessors at AP1 don't really do much, but AP2 Assault Intercessors with enough attacks, re-rolling wounds when it's on an objective, now it actually might be time to really, utilize that stratagem. And of course, making Lance when you're AP or like Strength 4, now you're wounding other Marines on 3s. It allows you to, fight into even vehicles on 5s rather than 6s. So what you're doing is, number one, you want to look at the break point of the strength as well. So at what point does having Lance really help me? Because sometimes, depending on the strength characteristic, can make massive differences where you think, actually, yeah, this is an absolute guaranteed, and especially if you can combine that with reroll wounds, for example. Okay, so that's when I would certainly look at that. But yeah, the next stratagem, which I think is really important to look at, and we probably should have covered this first, because this allows you in your command phase to pick a unit and stick it in any doctrine that you want for a CP.
Okay, fantastic. So adaptive strategy is such a super powerful stratagem, and the reason, of course, I asked that question about whether the unit or the army has to be in that doctrine, and because it's the unit, that means that you could give out adaptive strategy and you could stack Honor the Chapter in, and of course, if you've got any way of reducing the command points it costs to target your unit, then it's a lot easier to do that.
Yeah, exactly that. And also, if you've got that enhancement that triggers, like the Honorvehement in the Assault Doctrine, so now you're getting the extra AP, you're getting the Lance, you're getting the extra attacks, all for 1 CP. And it could have been free if you had a captain. So it is really, really useful. And I think as a Space Marine player, you just want to sit back and go, right, I need to do my Oath of Moment. I need to pick a doctrine, and I need to consider if I want to use this stratagem. They are the 3 decisional points you need to make in your command phase. Okay,
important question about adaptive strategy. Does it replace the doctrine that you've got in play for the army for that unit?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so you can't have 2 doctrines at the same time, which I think is fair.
Yeah, it says instead of, so yeah, you would absolutely, this is the one you're getting. But normally I think the units that you're going to be using this on, that's where they want to be anyway. That's their happy place.
Cool. Can you think of a unit that you'd use this maybe every turn just to try and keep them at maximum effectiveness?
Yeah, so I love myself a good 6 Centurion Devastators. Okay, now, unfortunately, they've only got short legs, so they're only moving 4 inches a turn, giving this unit the additional advance really helps them cut some angles.
Okay, so Devastator Doctrine for your Devastator Centurions, that makes sense.
Yeah, or you've got, like, let's say, a captain with Assault Intercessors. Let's get them into, you know, that Assault Doctrine so we can advance in charge to really extend our threat range. Okay. And also, I think, as your opponent, knowing that if you've got units that are staging in a building, like, for example, here on the table, then great, you know, whatever's behind it, my threat range is automatically potentially extended by 6 inches.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. You've got to be very wary of that if you're playing against a Space Marine Gladius Task Force army as well. Yeah. What's our next stratagem?
So the next one is Stor of Fire, okay? Now, this is going to link really well with the Devastating Doctrine. So all of your ranged attacks are going to have ignores cover. This is really, really good when you can ignore cover. But then, when you're in the Devastating Doctrine, you also increase the armor penetration by 1 as well.
Ooh, that's a lot of hurt. And this can go on any Adeptus Astartes unit?
Any. So
Repulsor Executioner, 6 Centurion Devastators.
This is what I'm using all the time. Because now all of a sudden and this is the difference, right? Let's say you've got an AP, I don't know, a 3+ save vehicle in cover. Mm-hmm. An ideal target for a las cannon. Yep. Well, I'm AP 3.
Okay.
So
well, you've got cover.
Yeah.
So
AP2.
It'll be AP2 essentially. I've got 5 up save. I'm pretty happy with those odds.
Yeah. You might, in 5 up saves can spike, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you've got armor contempt.
Well, I'll spend it.
Yeah, because now you're on a 4+.
50-50.
Yeah, or what you do, maybe if you're out in the open, you could be like, cool, I'll pop smoke.
Cool, -1 to hit, and I have cover.
And you have cover, exactly. Now, all of a sudden, my AP3, which sounds great on paper, is putting a 3-up armor save vehicle on a 4-up. Not so good. So with this, automatically, you're not going to pop the smoke.
No.
So I'm telling you, look, hey, I'm getting rerolls because you're probably my oath target, or that's obviously what, for example, the Devastator Centurions get anyway as reroll hits. So you're probably not going to smoke because you've obviously got the igniting the -1, and also you're not going to get your cover. Right, great. Now I'm also saying, cool, I'm additional AP1. So now my AP3 is not just AP3, it's AP4.
And ignores cover.
And ignores cover. So are you going to armor contempt now?
Oh, I mean, depends how important it is, but probably not. I think I have to accept realistically
it's dead.
that vehicle is gone.
Yeah, so me spending 1 CP changes your decision on what you do. Sure, you've still got the resources left, but it now massively impacts the rest. Now, I can allow myself to go, cool, when I know I've got this stratagem, I can put 6 las cannons into your tank, and then I can put all the missiles somewhere else. And those missiles are still going to get the same level of benefit. So now, in your mind, you're thinking, okay, well, that's 2 units gone. I'm happy with that. So I think this is a fantastic stratagem on that unit.
Yeah. And that unit as well, actually, which we'll see, of course, in the list.
Yeah.
So what's the final stratagem available to us as a Gladius Task Force user?
This is probably my favourite. It's squad tactics, okay? Now, what this allows you to do is when an enemy unit gets within 9 inches, because they've either moved, fallen back, advanced, done any type of move, they've ended that move within 9, you can use this. You can roll a dice and move your unit that number of inches up to your movement value.
Okay, so if it was aggressors, I could only go 5 inches, even if I rolled a 6?
Correct.
Right.
Okay, that is the important thing. Now, when you're in the tactical doctrine, it's just a flat 6.
Uh-huh.
Obviously still up to the movement characteristic of your unit, but you don't roll the dice. The dice roll is effectively a 6 whilst you're in the tactical doctrine.
Okay, so you could step behind a wall maybe to avoid line of sight?
You could jump in a transport.
You could jump in a transport.
Yes, and I think this is something that I've used a lot with my Black Templar army. Every time I've used that as a Gladius detachment, because I'm trying to get back in my Land Raiders all the time. Yeah. And the great thing I think with Land Raiders is that because you've got the assault ramp, typically your Land Raider is near where you've charged. Or, even smarter, charge with the Land Raider as well. So this means that even if you roll a 1, providing that you keep all of your unit pretty close, you're still hopefully going to be able to get back in that transport as well.
Okay, fantastic.
Really, really good.
I'm sure we'll see more of that when we look at some advanced tactics for Gladius Task Force.
We'll see that in action.
Okay, so final question for you essentially then is, which doctrines do you think are the most useful across the army?
I can't give you an answer because they're all useful depending on who you're playing.
Okay.
There's not really one that I think is the tactical doctrine, when you use it in the right turn, can be game changing, because it means that your opponent, if they've tried to like expend units by locking you down and tagging you up, and you're like, well, now I can't do anything. Tactical doctrine, I move it, I'm falling back, I'm shooting, I'm falling back, I'm charging. That one really gets you out of, I would say, like mistakes. The advanced or like the assault doctrine increases your threat range.
Yes.
But being able to advance and shoot really makes like the redundancy come in for your shooting units to be able to hide and not get shot, now get out and now start shooting and be able to cut those firing lanes. So I think it's so hard to really give you a straight answer on that, because I think they're all great.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. So the final question then is, what can you expect to see from a Gladius Task Force army on the table?
I mean, I think literally anything, because if you've got vehicles, great, it's going to work well in this detachment. Having assault on your vehicles for the one turn you need it, great. To not get bogged down in combat, so you're taking the -1 to hit. Cool, fall back, start shooting. So it works well with vehicles. It certainly works well with some combat threats. I think it would be a mistake not to include some combat threats, just as it would be a mistake not to include some ranged attack threats. Take a little bit of everything, okay? But everything will work in this detachment, which I think is why it's probably my favourite.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah.
So, well, let's take this a bit further, and we'll dive into some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Yeah.
And we'll do that in the next video.
So hopefully you enjoyed that lesson and got some value from it, and you see a much better way to play your Space Marines. Now, if you do want to get your hands on the rest of the Masterclass series, then you can get your first month at half price. So check out the link below and get signed up for the Masterclass subscription series.